Welcome to the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast. Subscribe now so you don't miss a drop of straight talk you can't get anywhere else. We discuss the whiskeys to drink, music to listen to, and what it really takes to be an effective leader. I'm your host, Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. Tonight's guest, certified financial educator and investment advisor, Regis Bingham, and the visionary behind Makita Filmworks, Dana Bingham-Guanillo. Hey, what you drink? I think you hit on another point I'd love for us to just talk a little bit about, that even outside of the educational element, there seemed to be this common expectation that you're going to be trying to do something. There's no such thing as sitting at home and, watching TV all day. And I don't know what that looks like, but there was always this expectation that you would be doing something in whatever field you're in. You're going to be trying to do something to advance yourself in that field. How commonplace is that, Regis, Dana?
Well, for me, I got that same message that you're going to be the best at whatever it is that you're going to do. And I try to instill that in my daughter as well, that, hey, whatever it is that you do, you have to be the best, because everybody pitches in and everybody has to make it. Whenever I introduce myself in a brand new setting, I talk about our educational background, going back several generations from not being allowed to read, but making sure that your children are able to read. Once you are able to read, that may be as far as you can go, but you made sure that your children got some sort of formal education. It went from there to making sure you got some formal education to making sure that everybody goes to college. Now we're sitting here where we can go back and say, okay, our grandparents never went past the 6th grade, but we're all sitting here with a master's degree. And that is really indicative of who we are, and making sure that education is important, and making sure that we're always pushing to be better than we're always trying to get to the next level.
Mm. Yeah.
I think something that mom and dad also would do that I didn't realize that no other parents really do is they actually encouraged us, whatever our interest was, even if they weren't familiar what it was or could direct us. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to, there was a time that I couldn't say podiatrist. I said, I wanted to be a foot doctor. And dad was like, okay, let's go to a podiatrist. You're going to learn what you need to do to become a podiatrist. I think I was probably, 8 years old. I'm going to be a podiatrist. And we got to the podiatry office. And the first thing that the guy was saying, I went to medical school and I did all of this. And I was like, oh, you had to study science? And then the next thing he said, oh, yeah, and sometimes we deal with fungus and, and I was like, ooh, rethink this idea of wanting to be a foot doctor.
That foot doctor thing ain't working out.
So I'm like, and dad was like, okay, well, think about what you enjoy to do, and would like to study, because that's how you decide what you're going to major in college. And mind you, I'm 8 years old having this conversation about college.
Yeah.
Who does that? And that was one of the things that I feel like, mom and dad just really kind of helped us create our own path in this world, and was like, okay, you want to do XYZ? I even remember them saying, Bucknell.
What is
sure?
what is a Bucknell?
Where's Bucknell? but you were adamant about Bucknell since what, junior high?
Yeah, it was ninth grade. Ninth grade.
Yeah, and they were like, okay, well, these are the things that you need to do to prepare you for that level, of college, because that's pretty much Ivy League level. So I didn't realize until I got to college and I had friends who were struggling in their major. And I'm like, well, why are you majoring in this? Oh, well, my mother wants me to be a doctor. My dad wants me to be a lawyer, or that's what my parents do. And I'm going to follow in their footsteps. And then I realized that, a lot of times parents are living through their kids. So I appreciate that our parents just kind of let us find out what we want to do. And they're like, okay, well, that's what you want to do. I'll support you.
So I mean, so thinking about, and again, this I wouldn't be me if I wouldn't bring this back to some leadership principles. But so many leaders, they're reluctant to find out what their people want to do for fear that they won't have control. Well, you're right. You won't have control. It's called empowering. And Dana, you brought that up. You brought that up earlier. One of the coolest stories that I tell often, and I think about this a lot when I work with leaders, is the fact that Dad taught all of us how to play chess. And it wasn't until, man, I guess a few years after I had left the house when I realized that Dad didn't know how to play chess. He actually learned how to play chess to be able to teach us how to play chess. He was like one chapter ahead of us in the book. And just the foresight to understand that this is what my kids are going to need. Let me give that to them, although I don't know how to do it myself. I don't understand where that insight comes from. But I sure do find myself leaning into that as I'm a parent now, because my daughter is getting into stuff that I can't even pronounce, right? And I've got to encourage her. I've got to encourage her in the right way and try to do it in a way where I don't sound totally stupid, but I have no idea all this stuff that she's studying as a biochemistry major and thinking about trying to get into biotechnology. I have no idea. But that's the model of what parenthood is that I received growing up. Regis, I know you've got some stories too about some of the classes you had to take, and Dad kind of took you as far as he could go, and just like,
Absolutely. And I had this experience, and I used it in working with Amber on her math and doing things that she had never done before. And I found my old Latin book that I had taken when I was in eighth grade, seventh grade, something like that. And I recalled Dad pulling out the Latin book. He said, now this is a Latin book. He says, now I bought you this Latin book. I am actually going to open the Latin book for you. All right. Now you're going to have to do something for yourself. Now I done bought the book. I done opened the book. You're going to have to do something. All right. But I lean on mom and dad's leadership a lot because they were always, even if they didn't know how things were to go, they at least exposed us to a lot of things so that we'd be able to figure out if this is something that we wanted to do, if we were interested in or not. They didn't really dictate to us a lot of this is what you should be interested in, but they just exposed us to a lot of things. I think about how many different sports I tried, right? Good at some, not good at others, right? But I think about track, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, just being exposed to those different things. And I think that's their genius.
I was going to add to the same vein of Latin. Dad was adamant that we, and mostly me, learned Spanish and went out and bought these Berlitz tapes. You got to learn Spanish. So I think that Berlitz tapes, this was probably probably around 9 years old, maybe younger than that. So I've been trying to learn Spanish for over 30 years. I was just like, and Dad got as far as like that, the greetings. And he used to always say, habla español. He would say that over and over again, I got to high school. I'm going to take Spanish, Spanish 1, Spanish 2, failed Spanish 2, had to take Spanish 2 over again. And it wasn't till I was a grown adult and realized why that was so important, because now I've married someone whose first language is Spanish.
He was trying to get you ready. Come on now.
First trip to Peru, I'm sitting there the whole entire time kicking myself. If only I had listened to Dad and stuck with the Spanish. And this was even before Spanish was like this required thing to learn in school, that Dad was just like, you need to learn a second language. And he was trying to introduce it to me at a young age where it was easy for me to pick it up. You never, I always say this all the time, you never understand what your parents are trying to get you to do when you're that young. It just seems like they're nagging, but they definitely mean well. And now I'm kicking myself that I'm like trying to do Duolingo when I had Berlin's 30-something years ago.
Wow. All right. So now here's my opportunity to brag on each of you to your face in front of all of my listeners around the world. So here I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to something that I say often about each of you. So, Regis, I want you to respond to this thing, man, because this is still puzzling me. We heard a little bit about your background, but do you have to get certified in everything that you're curious about? I usually tell the story this way, that I was fortunate enough to talk myself into attending Rice Business School, and I took some finance classes, and I came home pretty excited about. I think I learned about compound interest or something like that, and I was sharing that with you, and you're like, "Huh, that's interesting." And before I know it, you're like a certified financial planner. I was getting pretty deep into my church and was studying the Bible pretty significantly. And so I shared some scripture with you, and you said, "Huh, that is interesting." And then you go off and you become an ordained minister. I share some psychological things that I picked up, some just concepts I thought was kind of interesting. Okay, so you go get a master's degree. Dude, can't you just read an article about things that are interesting? Where does this commitment to being certified and studying a thing at the highest possible level, where does that come from, do you think?
That's a great question. And I'm not entirely sure, but one of my earliest memories could be around, why did I want to go into psychology to begin with? And I remember we joked around because we were kind of crazy as kids, but I remember saying, I want to be able to say, you're crazy, and actually have something of weight to back it up. Yeah, I could certify you that you're crazy, right? and I think that the certification is just a validation for me that, yeah, this isn't just my opinion. If I were on a witness stand, then they'd probably say, no, this is a credible witness, right? And I've got something that, to back me up. And part of that, from an upbringing standpoint, I remember hearing mom and dad say to me all the time, if I cannot just be just as good as the next person, that's not good enough. Because if we are of equal ability, they're going to choose the other person every time. So I had to, in my mind, in my rearing, in my upbringing, I always had the mindset that I always had to bring something more to the game, something that other people don't have. So that I remember dad saying, I have to be head and shoulders, unquestionably, you'd have to be an idiot not to select me type person. Other than that, others can always justify why they would pick someone else. And part of my thinking is, in their upbringing of me, is that I always want to put myself in a position that even if someone does not want to select me, they can't help it. They have to. Because if I don't get selected by them, their opponent will select me. And then they'd have to play against me. And that's not something that they'd be willing to.
Wow. Yeah, and similarly, Dana, you have always, in my mind, done the thing that you're really not supposed to do that, right? You're not supposed to be able to do that. No, nobody does that. And, I just remember very early on, as kids do when they're really young coming up and they've got their favorite singers, they've got their favorite actresses, and everyone knows of my thing for Janet Jackson. And, so you had yours, but you actually would like go out and meet them and create pen pal relationships with these singers. And I'm like, nobody does that, Dana. And then, I was really, really excited when in my early 20s, was able to leave the country. And I think I went to London for the first time and was really excited about the experience and how much growth I had from that. And, come back home. And I can't even count how many countries you've been to, Dana. You probably have the most stamps in your passport than any of us. But nobody does that. And then we've got kind of a Midwest upbringing, and we've lived other places, after leaving home. Regis, you went off to Pennsylvania for school and just kind of stayed there for a bit. And, I kind of did the corporate thing and moved around a bit. But Dana, your first trip is to like Washington, D.C. And after Washington, D.C., you go to New York. It's like,
how busy of a city can you go to?
DC, New York, nobody goes to those places. But my favorite story, and I'm going to let you weigh in here. My favorite story is there was a point in time when you were really, really serious about trying to get in shape. And so you're going to the gym, you're taking these classes, you're working with a trainer. And then they start saying, well, if you really want to get in shape, then you should probably start boxing. That's kind of the new thing now. And you start boxing. I look up and you're like fighting, amateur fights and winning amateur fights as a boxer. And if you win two more, then there's a chance you might go to the Olympics. Dana, nobody does that. Where does this confidence to try things, regardless of whether there are peers around doing it, this daring to think, of course it's possible because it's there. I think there, and I want you to talk about this. There was a report I believe you were doing in school on, was it Ruby Bridges or Wilma Rudolph? Wilma Rudolph. So you were doing a report on Wilma Rudolph, probably for Black History Month, as we all did as kids. And you were looking for books to do your research and you couldn't find any books. And you're like, wait a second, if she's still alive, why don't I just see if I can get her on the phone and call her and ask her what. So you called Wilma Rudolph. Dana, nobody does this. Where does this come from?
I think it's from being the youngest. And I have two older brothers. And so I'm just like, in a weird way, we're competing. I'm like, look, my brothers are doing great things. They played sports and they were, getting these letters and all of these things. And so I'm like, well, how can I level up? So I'm just trying to match the greatness of being, you know, living up to the standard that my older siblings had set. I don't know. I don't know. I can't even answer that question. It's just really, because when I look back, I don't even see, I'm like, is that a different life? Is that a different person? Like, who is that? I just get into things because I want to try them. And then it's like, well, I want to be the best at it. I remember in high school, I was trying to find, in the yearbook, you put your ambition or your goal or whatever. And I remember talking to dad. I'm like, well, I don't want to put what I want to grow up to be, because what if that doesn't turn out to be? And then it's in print. And I'm like, oh, well, I failed at that. And dad had found this quote. And he said, well, this is actually you. And I think you should put this quote. And the quote was by Booker T. Washington. And it was, excellence is to do a common thing in an uncommon way. And so in my high school yearbook, my ambition is to do a common thing in an uncommon way. And that has always just been my guiding principle. Like, whatever it could be, just the most realistic common thing, but I want to be the best at it. I want people to remember my name next to it of like, wow, you're the reason why I started this. I don't go in, with that in my mind. I just know I want to put my all, at least give my best effort in first try. And then if I get tired of it, then move on to something else.
And so now you watch TV in an uncommon way.
Yeah, I mean, now it's not even just about watching TV. It's multi-platform. It's creating things that, oh, this could be better suited online, and then dictating how this should roll out online. And even though I'm a producer and an editor, when I work with clients, I'm always thinking in multiple levels that they're like, well, Dana, this is not what I was really expecting from you as my editor. But I'm like, well, these are the things that I have, and you should think about, so I can be able to create the best whatever product you want me to create. Where is this going to live? How is this going to live on? So yeah, I mean, I guess that's the best way to answer that question.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd love to bring
Yeah,
in.
yeah, if it's all right, I just wanted to share because growing up, I actually saw some of those seeds planted in Dana early on of just being daring. Because when she wanted to just try something, I remember mom and dad, well, try it. You never know until you just go out and just try it and see. If it doesn't work out, okay, well, it doesn't work out. And I remember her just wanting to put her own stamp on things when they were looking for her to go to school, right? And they took her to this school that I went to, Moses Brown. And so, of course, trying to recruit her to come to the school, the tack that they were trying to take was, hey, you could come here, Regis did this, Regis did that, you go in, you could do those things. And they thought that that was the big selling point, right? Come to find out, that was the thing that turned her off the most, and said, well, I don't want to come, I want to come in and make my own name. And so that was just kind of her way of just wanting, she always had that seed of, I'm just going to go out here, I'm going to do it my way, win, lose, or draw, but at least I did it and I put my own stamp on it.
So the common themes that I'm picking up from all of us is just this idea of how much our parents really played beyond their tips, right? Even in situations when they didn't know how it was going to turn out, they knew that it had to be a good thing. Whether it was introducing language, whether it was, I remember being 8 years old and, dad requiring that we use chopsticks at the table. I'm like, chopsticks? I'm 8. How do you, I can't. Yeah. But it was just that exposure to things that they didn't quite understand what was on the other side, but they knew that it could only help. And when I think about leaders, that's a big part of what effective leaders do, that they lead as far as they can, and then they push their people, they call their people to go higher. Another concept that I'm picking up on is how, we all three obviously grew up in the same house, but we're very different people. And my upbringing was different than Regis's upbringing, which was different than Dana's upbringing. I like to say that the oldest always catches all the hell, the middle wears them down, and the baby gets the free ride. That's kind of what I usually say. I don't know how true that is, but we're all different people. So just from a leadership perspective, being able to manage people to what they need as opposed to what you want to do, that's something that I definitely pick up. What are some, am I off base with those concepts?
No, I remember having this conversation with Dad all the time. He said a lot of people will say, well, I love my kids the same. And he would tell me all the time, I said, I don't love my kids the same. And he said, I love all my kids adequately, right? And you think about it, if Dad loved me in the ways that he loves Dana, we would have some issues. Right? We would have some real serious issues. But you always felt their love, and yes, they did treat us all differently. And as a result, we all have different leadership styles. And I think order has a lot to do with it as well.
I'll just kind of throw in, for being a woman, having that balanced relationship with both my parents, I think has made me very much of a headstrong, very much, what they say, boss lady or whatever, because, mom basically instilled in me to have my own and be independent. Whereas in the 80s, and in the 90s for girls, it was always, you do these things and then you're going to get married. But mom never really gave me that painted that picture of, get you a boyfriend, get married, have kids. It was always about have your own money, have your own career, have your own, lead the way, and then all those things come second. So I think having, a woman figure to instill that in me and not come from a man was very, very empowering, because I don't know too many of my friends who have moms that kind of reinforce that, have a career. It was always, when are you going to get married? When you have kids? Mm-hmm. Mom was just like, do what you got to do. If you want to stay in New York, you got to work, get your hustle on, that kind of conversation. And I feel like that kind of set foundation for me as an adult and as an adult woman.
Wow. Well, we could talk all evening. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna coax you guys to come into the VIP room with me, because we didn't talk as much about jazz, and I absolutely blame my dad for this jazz thing, because he just exposed us to so many different kinds of music, and Grover Washington Jr. and Joe Sample, and no kids my age was listening to all that stuff.
Every Saturday
uh,
morning.
so hey, before we go into the VIP room, I just want to give each of you guys an opportunity to share what you're doing and how people can get a hold of you if they want to work with folks in the fields that you're in, because both of you guys are in totally different fields, but I can't refer anyone higher in the fields than you guys. So, Dana, let's go ahead and start with you. How can people get a hold of you if they want you to help them with their video concept?
You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Makeda Filmworks. And do you want me to spell it out?
You might want to spell that.
Makeda Filmworks, Makeda Filmworks. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Dana Bingham-Guanillo.
And what kind of things do you do? What's your specialty as an offering?
My specialty is video editor, so I can edit any kind of content, video, audio. If you're interested in creating content, I will, help you kind of ideate around ideas and build that up. I am working with some old college friends now with their podcast. So I'm serving as their co-producer and editor and helping them strategize how to, expand their brand. So you can also follow them at Straight No Chaser Podcast on Instagram and all the places where podcasts are played. So I'm, dabbling in a lot of different things. But I'm always up for a challenge.
And I'll tell you, it's a great podcast too. I mean, obviously you got to check out Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership, but Straight No Chaser, man, sounds like there needs to be a collaboration, because I mean, there's a lot of fun over there. So the other brother, Regis Bingham, where can people find you, and how do they know when they need to work with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Regis Bingham. My website is financialprofessional.tfaconnects.com/Regis Bingham. You can also email me at regis.bingham@tfaconnect. I am a financial coach, right? And with a lot of people being financially illiterate in this country, and what you thought to be true about money turns out not to be true, when would you want to know about it? So that's when they would give me a call, trying to figure out this money game. As a coach, I try and create financial champions in this money game. And that's what I do. We work with individuals as well as companies, and being able to help them not only grow your wealth, but also to keep from losing it as well. So you've got to have an offensive game and a defensive game. So that is what I do. I love, love, love working with people that want to take their financial wealth to the next level.
And as I said earlier, I can't endorse any one higher in these two fields than these two, because I have literally known them for all their life. And if they don't treat you right, I've got the authority to beat them up. So definitely check them out. Hey guys, I have just so enjoyed having you on this part of my podcast. I was actually working with Audrey, who is the owner of the podcast, and we were kind of coming up with ideas for guests, and she said, "Wow, you haven't had your brother on the podcast yet. What's up with that?" And I was like, you're right. And she said, "And I've never heard you talk to your sister, and she's like the coolest one of all y'all." So, peace up, and thank you to Audrey for making this happen. And raise your glass before we step over to the VIP room. And I just want to thank you guys for everything that you have meant to me personally, as well as professionally, because there are times when you just need someone to endorse that you're not going crazy. And you guys have always been that for me. So I want to thank you and keep doing great work. Cheers.
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 Hey, it's not too late. Hit that subscribe button so you're sure to catch the next episode. If you're really enjoying the vibe, leave us a review or become a VIP for guest and show exclusives. Cheers.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.